Hi there, this is taken from my monthly watchlist series. If you want to see the full thing, the link's in the description. Cheers. After 6 years since the last episode, the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared TV series was finally released, and I think it might be a masterpiece. The original web show would typically centre around an introduction of a teacher who would burst into an educational song that would quickly deteriorate into madness. This outline is carried over to the series and expanded upon, with more characters, multiple songs, and a more in-depth story and exploration of the themes. Under the watchful eye of Yellow's dad Roy, the gang, Red Guy, Yellow Guy, and Duck, must learn a lesson each week in their fabric nightmare world. Production-wise, everyone brings their A-game. All the puppets, props, and sets look great on screen. There are numerous details in the background, references to the original series, and extra jokes for eagle-eyed viewers to look out for. I think the music from the original series was partly responsible for its popularity and rewatchability. I think because the songs would get stuck in your head, and this aspect is carried over to the series. All are catchy, dark, or funny, or all of the above. Memories was a particular musical highlight. Obviously, it would be very hard to produce, but I would 100% love to see a Don't Hug Me I'm Scared live show. One of my favourite additions to the series is Grolton and Hoveris, a Wallace and Gromit-esque show they watch. Much of the series pays homage to various forms of children's media. The design of the puppets and the felt world they inhabit is very reminiscent of shows like Sesame Street or Rainbow, but the bigger series allows the creators to delve into different aesthetics. Lily and Todney are like a demonic Rosie and Jim, and Stain Edwards has the morphing, fluid stop-motion animation of characters like Pingu or Morph. The Mulhoven sequence is a direct parody of Trumpton with the silent characters and omniscient narrator. It's inherently quite a creepy animation style. Radiohead even used it for their Burn the Witch music video, which is a great music video by the way, and it works just as perfectly for the scene. There's hand-drawn animation as well, which of course is a long tradition in children's TV, going back to things like old Disney and Warner Brothers cartoons. And Yellow's Brain Friends has this hyper-colourful, sinister CG aesthetic that seems to be popular these days. The main themes of the series are questioning tradition and mistrust in authority figures. In Jobs, the warehouse the gang are in is not dissimilar to the ones Amazon uses. The episode criticises a work culture that traps people in jobs with low standards until they're old by putting barriers in front of basic necessities, so people have to work in jobs they hate in order to survive. Episode 2 discusses grief and the process of mourning and the quickly moving on that is expected. My favourite episode of the series, Family, heavily critiques the traditional family unit and dismissal of anything that doesn't fit that mould. I mean, the gang has sort of a found family vibe, with Red and Duck both considering themselves the father figure, but this angers Lily and Todney. I thought his name was Tommy, but according to this wiki, it's Todney. Episode 4, Friendship, shows the faux safety features on websites that are designed to keep people online and engaged, and ultimately lead to depression and declining mental health. In Transport, the gang go against the format of the series itself when their teacher dies and they decide to go out on their own. Mulhoven is a look at the aspirational life not always being what it's sold as. And in the finale, Electricity, the first half talks about needless consumerism, endless upgrades, and the price of electricity, which is horribly precedent given the current energy crisis in the UK. The second half, as Yellow, questioned the ultimate authority. The overseer of the house, Leslie. Duck's origins. We get a lot of Duck's backstory, or at least it's heavily implied that he was involved with the army and potentially died at war. In the opening episode, one of the jobs on the board is war hero, and Duck pictures himself as a general. In the next episode, Death, Duck shows one of his happiest memories as when he was flying in a Spitfire, which was a very recognisable British fighter plane used in the Second World War. On the side of the Spitfire is this symbol, which we learn in Friendship is his name. Later on in the Memories song, Duck talks to the Yellow Guy about the military, saying they're invincible, and saying Yellow was far too weak to join. This feels a lot like a grandfather talking to a grandchild. Duck's costume is fairly old-fashioned, with the pocket square and corduroy, and he sits on a rocking chair while he recounts stories to the Yellow Guy. In the intro to the third episode, Duck is balding, which suggests he's aging or at least older than the other characters. In Friendship, Duck's to-do list mentions a grease fire, which is a very specific kind of fire that's also mentioned in the opener. Duck uses gouging tools and mentions that he's been forging documents. Maybe Duck died in a grease fire or used his gouging tools for torture or forged documents in an undercover capacity. Or are these just throwaway jokes that I'm reading too much into? Yeah, probably. The big question we're left with at the end is, who is Leslie? To me, the best answer is that she's Yellow Guy's mum. When Duck is forcibly buried, his gravestone says David, but according to Duck, that's not his name, and we see later on his name is spelled like this. But Yellow does have a D written on his dungarees. So if Yellow is David, and this is David's grave, then how did he die? Well, fast forward to the penultimate episode, Transport. Yellow dreams he's in the town Mulhoven. He's shown his new home, and his neighbour is Red Guy, and 2 doors down lives Roy, Duck, and someone else. But when he's given a present, a live bird by a vicar, it flies into the road, and Yellow follows it, where he's hit by a car. This is the same car we see driving under the underpass and is parked next to Yellow when he arrives, which is odd. Does this mean the car followed him or hit him on purpose? Giving a child a bird is risky. Chances are the bird will fly away and the child will follow it. Why would someone deliberately try and hit a child? When Yellow wakes up, he sees a bird has hit his window. This bird is far more realistic than the usual animals they encounter, and perhaps suggests Yellow really was hit by a car and died. We see Roy, Duck, and someone else watching Yellow from an upstairs window. Duck being there works with the Duck as Yellow's grandfather idea, but the other person looks quite a lot like Officer Sinclair. We see him earlier, and the narrator says he's
on his way to the station, no doubt.
This doesn't actually confirm he was going to the station. Could he have been going to Roy's instead? Was Roy having an affair with Officer Sinclair? I mean, it rhymes for one thing. In the next episode, when Yellow regains his intelligence, he knows a lot about insurance. Perhaps Roy took out a life insurance policy on his son. Okay, that might be a stretch. The corrupt officer not protecting citizens and a religious figure not looking after children ring true to the real world, and fit with Don't Hug Me I'm Scared's mistrust of authority figures. The narrator is played by Vivian Sohn, who plays Leslie in the finale, who lives upstairs and appears to be controlling everything the gang does. Her name is written several times on different vehicles and is the script editor for Grolton and Hoveris. Her job is to have control over the story. On the wall, she has objects from the series, notably the Chuddle Dollops from Family, which was an episode revolving around Yellow and Mums, next to the shovel from Death and the batteries that Yellow runs on. Earlier in the episode, Yellow is revealed to be a robot, or at least manufactured, and talks the way he does because his batteries are low. Once his are changed, he regains his intellect and follows the stairs to Leslie's attic, with the photos hung on the wall implying Yellow has made this trip before. The only thing on his to-do list was to remember it. Leslie has a drawer full of duplicates of Duck. The recurring image of the series is copies being made of the trio. Red's family are exact doubles, Yellow often stares into his reflection, and when Duck dies, Red makes an exact duplicate out of real flesh. So there is precedent for making doubles to replace the dead. If we assume that Leslie is Yellow's mum and her son died, she may have rebuilt him and given him this life where he can hang out with his friends and learn lessons. This all could be a manifestation of a mother's grief after losing her son and finding out her husband was having an affair. But that's just my interpretation. There are even more mysteries and clues throughout the series that are hinted at, like this reoccurring symbol that probably means family, as it's the same shape as the family game Lily and Todney didn't invent. Or what is up the attic stairs? Or was the original Duck killed and replaced by the duplicate Red made? Even aside from the theorising, however, this show works incredibly well on its own. I've rewatched it a few times now and it gets better with each rewatch. The surreal comedy is equally funny and disturbing, and the outright horror is really inventive and unnerving. Like Lily's human hand on Yellow's shoulder really got me. There are loads of catchy songs and the production is flawless. Please support this show legally so there's a better chance of a second series.